Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk Etchells. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to kind of filter in. We have an amazing panel of two great dudes and close friends of mine. Michael Menninger, who is in London. Michael, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good to be here.
And Eric Doyle. Doyle, where are you at, dude? Your Star Trophies, they look really good in the background today.
They
Did you
look
polish
good,
those
yeah.
before the presentation?
They look small too.
It's a daily
They
thing
look
here.
small.
With not much to do, you got to do that every day, you know. I'm joining you from outside of beautiful Lake Minnetonka, Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's how much I know where I'm at. Yeah, all good here, out in the big Midwest. Where are you today,
Nice.
Alex?
I'm in rainy Newport Beach, California. It's weird.
Raining.
It's raining today, a little June gloom, and I don't even know if the sun's going to come out, but that's all right, whatever. As we kind of get started, you know, normally at the beginning of these things, we encourage everybody to help out their fleets and register for the 2020 season. It's really important now more than ever to help our local fleets. But in addition, we also want to give the Etchells youth team a big shout out. They have a great initiative with Steve Benjamin kind of heading the group. You probably see them in an ambulance at regattas. They hang out there. No, you cannot get medical treatment in that ambulance, but it is a good look. And these kids are all around the race course and oftentimes find themselves in the front. So if you're interested in donating, there's the email address useyt20@gmail.com, or contact Steve Benjamin, Senate Bischoff, or Michael Gavin. All donations are tax deductible. So that's a kind of a cool initiative. Michael, do you have much interaction with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, Benj is really involved with the youth teams, and he's kind of lent them some of his boats to use from time to time, and we've kind of taken them under our wing a little bit at some of the regattas, helping them with, you know, fixing things on their boat or helping them set things up. And they're all great kids and good sailors. And yeah, it's like you said, Alex, it's cool to see them in the front of the fleet sometimes and competing at such a high level. So it's good to support them.
So today's topics include who is Michael Menninger, what's it like sailing with Benj, what he's looking at when he's trimming his main, setting up his boat, and then talking about his recent transition, or Benj's recent transition to the Australian setup. If you do have any chat or questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We're going to open it up in about 15 minutes, basically to prevent the Zoom bombers from coming in and ruining this presentation. So, Michael, who are you? Where'd you come from, and how'd you get so good?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, my name's Michael. No, I grew up in Newport Beach, California, and learned how to sail in Sabbats in the Sabbat class, which is a really good boat to learn how to sail. And sailed in high school and college, and competed in the 420 and the FJ class growing up as a kid. And went to St. Mary's College, where Alex also went to. And won a couple of national championships there, so that was cool. And then after college, was lucky enough to get into the Etchells class pretty early on, and I've been in the class for I think 5 years now, which has been fantastic. And been getting into the 52 class a little bit. I've done tactics with Benj on his 52 Spooky, the Rio boat out in on the West Coast, and most recently the Interlodge program. And this last November I did a really cool sail from Brazil to France. It was my first transatlantic on an Imoca 60, which is a pretty incredible boat. So yeah, looking forward to getting sailing soon.
Yeah. So what's it like to sail with Benj? How did you guys meet? Just kind of start with your the origin of your guys' relationship.
Yeah, so I got into the Etchells class with Argyle Campbell, and I did a full year with Argyle, and we sailed we actually won the Biscayne Bay Series, which was really cool for us. And we had a really good year with Argyle. And at the end of that year, Benj was going through a bit of a change in his team, and he was looking for another tactician to bring onto his team. And lucky enough for me, we met and chatted for a bit, and kind of shared the same goals and passions about winning the Naturals Worlds. And we started sailing the next year. And I think that was at the start of 2016. But yeah, I mean, Benj is really great to sail with. He's obviously a very accomplished sailor in his own right. And I think our sailing styles kind of differ a little bit, which I think is phenomenal for our program. He's really focused. He brings the intensity every single day, and I'm maybe a little bit more laid back. And I think the combination of those two mentalities kind of help our team out.
And what do you do on the boat?
So I do the tactics on the boat, and I also trim the main.
So when you're trimming the main, what are what are the control lines that are in your lap? What do you hike off of? What are you looking at? Walk me through your thought process.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of controls, obviously, and it could be a little bit overwhelming at first if you're new to the boat. I think just as a main trimmer, you're really focused on the balance of the boat and how it's kind of moving through the water, and if there's too much kind of force being put into the boat from the main, or too much on the jib, and if there's an unbalance there. So I think my main role is to just achieve a good balance and kind of a neutral helm for Benj, to make it easy to drive to, and just to make sure the foils are working well. So for me, I just I think I'll just go through, I guess, like some of the main controls. Yeah, that is the tiller. You're doing really well, Alex, so far. Good job. Yeah, so I have I think that the first control that I play the most is the Traveler, and I mainly use that to try to achieve a constant heel angle. I also have, obviously the main sheet and the backstay, which are probably my second and third controls behind the Traveler. And then apart from that, obviously you have controls like the ram and things like that. And so, but yeah, I mean, I think the Traveler is a really good tool. And when I first entered the class, I was lucky enough to have Vince Bruin coach us on Argyle's team, and he told me that playing the Traveler was extremely important, and there's a lot of benefits from playing the Traveler before the main sheet. Probably the first of which is to achieve a consistent headstay tension, and it's kind of a quicker control to dump power or bring power into the boat. So I'm extremely active on the Traveler with every gust, every lull, and Benj and I have a really good dialogue with how much helm he has in the boat, and yeah, it's a good control.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got coached by Ed this winter, and every day in our debriefs, he would just be saying, Alex Michael is playing more Traveler than anybody out there and is going the fastest. So that was definitely something that we recognized from off the boat, and it's pretty universally recognized throughout the fleet. And I think other than the main trimmer also needs to be paying attention to the mast and kind of the relationship between the mast and the main and how it kind of sets up. Eric, you froth over this stuff, mast bend, and you dream about it. You got any questions for Michael about this stuff? I mean, pretty high level things here.
Mast bend. Well, I guess, that's the most important, one of the most important factors in the overall setup of the boat. We got some nice pictures here of our different setups. We just kind of want to, go over the basics and then kind of ask Michael how those guys do it with Benj. They go pretty well throughout the wind range. We start with the middle slide here. It's hard to see, but when there's leeward sag, that's kind of when we're looking to develop power. It effectively increases the entry angle in the main and makes it deeper and gives the boat more power. kind of looking in this picture, you'd say, because normally when it looks that windy in a picture, it's pretty windy on the water. So, and like it says, we're going to need more lower tension, because in this range, we don't want to have any side bend in the mast. If you could print this picture out and basically sight up the mast, you'll be able to tell, what the bend is like. I was just looking, I was doing that the other day with a guy who had a picture. Oh, my favorite boat, look, the Star. So you print the picture out, and you can bend the picture and basically sight up the mast, and you can see the bend. And this guy had a little bit of problem. He had a lot of tip fall off, which was making the sail look bad. But and then if you printed this out, the picture on the left is quite straight, and the picture on the right, when it gets really windy or quite overpowered, 16, 18, 20 knots, something like that, then we start looking for more poke at the middle of the mast in the spreader region. And we're trying to depower the boat through different ways, getting the tip to fall off a little bit. And then inquiring minds want to know, is this pretty much the basic philosophy that you guys adhere to with the bench program, Michael?
Yeah, of course. You nailed it. Like in lighter air, when you're looking for power, you want a little bit of sag to leeward. So like you want the center of the rig sagging to leeward, gives you a little bit more power. You can start hiking earlier in the kind of middle of the wind range, like you see on the foot on the left. The straight mast is really nice, and then as it gets windier and windier, obviously it helps you to depower a little bit if the tip of the mast can kind of start to fall off a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of like our general philosophy, right? And that's kind of already kind of integrated into our rig tuning a little bit. So when we don't have to think about it really too much on the water. So our kind of like base setting will probably achieve us more or less a straight rig. And then if there is really light and we need more power, we'll go down obviously from our base tune, and that inherently brings more mast sag to leeward and gives us more power, and vice versa. If we're overpowered, we'll obviously put more turns on the rig. And everyone has different ratios of uppers and lowers, and it's kind of up to each team and where they have their mast shroud location and what rig they have to determine which how many turns they need.
So like in light air, Michael, we were talking with Madro a couple weeks ago, and he looks up the mast in light air, and he says, oh, I want like half a mast of sag, or a mast width of sag, which is kind of his idea of what he uses as a reference. What do you use as a reference? You sight up the mast, or you have the bow guy do it, or?
Yeah, when we're practicing, we split up our practices to, the first half of a practice will be focused on speed, and we'll, pick a tuning partner and, just do lineups pretty much for hours.
Right.
And we'll sight the rig after every run, right? So either I'll do it or Ian will do it on the bow. And it's extremely important. So I think anytime that you feel like you're going well, or even if you feel like you're not going well, I think it's important just to get up there onto the deck and sight the rig and just see for yourself what you think is happening, whether the mast is, how many inches or mast columns it's sagging or going to weather.
And what's your max sag that you get in light air when you're trying to power up?
We usually try to use like inches as a unit of measurement. I think for us, it's like maybe 4 inches, which might be like the width of a mast.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And these big regattas, does Alex just constantly bug you on how to trim the main? What's going on? How do I trim this? Is that a problem sometimes? A distraction?
Well, when he got into the class, he was stealing the Argyle who I sold before, and I felt like I owed him a little bit of advice here and there. He kept coming to me after days of sailing, and
Gotcha. All right, good.
Kind of prodding.
You're helping him out. You're happy to help him out. That's good. And he buys you beers as a result, right?
It's kind of the other way around, but
as you mentioned,
flip the script there.
All right. So
yeah, I'm just getting shelled, and Michael is just helping me. Dude, you got to do better. That's typically what it is. The advice is, Alex, you just have to do better.
That's kind of my advice.
Unexcusable.
Yeah.
Got it.
So let's talk about the underpowered setup. Why don't you walk us? We just talked a little bit about mass sag. Certainly with these new jibs, the MAL and the GT, you end up having to sail with a straighter head stay. What's your relationship with the jib trimmer like on the water? What info are you trying to get from him, and how are you trying to help him get his jib set up correct?
Yeah, I mean, so my controls, the backstay and the ram, greatly affect the headstay tension, which then in turn affects the jib leach. So whatever change I make with the ram or the backstay, greatly affects his the trim that he needs to give us optimal trim. And between Ian and I, or whoever's doing that, we're trying to get the jib and the main to be relatively have the same sort of like leach profile. So they're both kind of trimmed in unison. Like it's not as effective if you're, really, pretty tightly trimmed on the main and then eased out on the jib. So we try to be in unison there. But yeah, as a main trimmer, something in lighter that I'm looking to do is just kind of get the backstay to a point where I'm kind of like happy with the main shape. And then the ram is a really good tool for inducing a little bit more headstay tension if you want it, and then also flattening the main out, which is really critical in light air if the wave state allows for it. Like in this photo specifically, it looks like Biscayne Bay and really flat water, and you can get away with a really flat main setup, which is just a little bit less drag and I think is pretty quick. But as soon as the waves kind of come up, that's something that you need to put into your equation of how flat you really want the main.
Yeah, that's nice. This is a good looking picture here. It looks like Miami. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss is that when we've got the crew in the boat, there's not a lot of wind here. There's 4 or 5, maybe, and then what's going on is that we're not loading the sail enough to really get any stretch in it at all. So the sail is effectively too full in light air. So we're doing what we can to flatten it, and just looking at this picture, what strikes me is really nice is that, the Traveler's quite high. It's in a nice position. The leach of Benji's main is nice and open. It's not tight. The boat to leeward, 1378, he looks a little tighter leach. Down low, if you can point to those overbend wrinkles, Alex.
So I think another kind of point on top of that, Eric, is the twist of the main is really important.
Yeah.
And also, like, if the camber in the main affects how much twist you need. Like if you have a deep main and you have the Traveler really high, you need to twist the main a lot to get the top of the sail to open up. Right. But if you have a flatter main and you have the Traveler really high, you don't quite need as much twist to get that top band to open up and get some flow on that top tail.
Right. Specifically, Alex, if you look a little bit lower at the overbend wrinkles, in light air, right there by the windows, I like to see, enough ram that those overbend wrinkles are coming just to the back end of those windows. That to me is kind of like a sign that in the flat water, really light air, crew in the boat, that the main is flat enough down low. That's
a really good rule of thumb, is to get those overbend wrinkles, just like you say, going just after those windows there.
Yeah. Nice high Traveler, to help the boat track a little nicer. And that's the thing, the Traveler's so high. And so if we make the main full, then we've made the boat super draggy. We're trying to get a little bit of helm so the boat tracks nicely. Like Michael says, we flatten it out so we can trim a little bit, but we can trim firm in this super flat water. But like you said, very, very quickly, once the waves come up, we're not trying to point anymore. We're trying to go fast through the water. And as we got to turn around and make the main fuller again, but open, still not stalled in the top in that condition. We start filling it up, twisting the sail, and looking more for power. But this is a nice shot. I wish we were all there now.
Another thing that people are doing to induce a little bit more side bend is they have the dog shims, which are the plastic pieces right where the in the
mast deck partners.
The partners are. and you can kind of like twist them and open them up and allow the mast to sag a little bit more lower down.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. We haven't done that too much recently. It was big in the past, and then everybody was kind of have the mast snug at the partners, and now they make some nice shims that you can let it sag, at the deck a little more, help induce, and that's, we're trying to do everything we can to power the boat up, right? We've got kind of two modes, we're either looking for power or we're trying to get rid of it. And we're trying to get the crew up on the side deck as quick as we can. We're trying to get them max height as quick as possible. And you go fast. Like, that's what you'd like to look around in light air, and you'd be the first guys hiking, I remember doing some work with Michael, with you guys and Benj a few years ago, and you were tuning against Laurie Smith, and Laurie was just quickly had everybody up on the rail and everybody hiking out hard. And remember that we really couldn't figure it out why. And he just had a lot more power than you guys, and he was faster. And then as soon as the wind came up, you guys were equal, and as it got a little windier, you got faster and faster.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, when he came to Miami like a couple years ago, I think he was the standout person in the really light. And I think they were just really aggressive with going, a lot of lower turns off to just try to get as much sag as they could in the rig, just to do whatever they could to get the guys, all the guys on the rail and hiking before everyone else. And they were really, really fast. And they were also sailing with a really flat boat, which I think makes driving to a little bit more difficult, but it's just another thing you could practice and try to get used to with, bringing people out hiking a little bit sooner, sailing with a flatter boat, obviously maybe in a calmer sea state, and it seemed to be really good for them.
Yeah.
So at this point, everybody, the chat room is now open. You can ask away, if you need advice on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we'll do our best to answer those questions too. But we did have one question, and it was on the last slide, but it could also pertain to this side. What sort of heel angle are you looking for in this lighter air? I mean, this is like the moment where you're kind of looking around being like, why do we sail these boats? But what type of heel angle are you looking for?
I mean, from the helmsman's point of view, they're always asking for as much helm as they can get, and some of the heel produces that helm. So I think in what's really, really light, we put Joe, who's our resident camper, up forward under the deck, and he gets to hang out in the shade. And then Ian and I will be out to leeward as far as we can, just to give a little bit of heel into the boat.
Yeah, I mean, what we have to remember is that the Etchel's quite big, has a lot of surface area. So when the boat is perfectly straight, I mean, that's basically the lowest drag solution. That's the least amount of resistance that the hull is giving you. So if you could sail that way, that'd be great, but oftentimes the bow wanders. So we want to induce a little bit of heel, and staying forward in the boat too, helps sink the bow a little bit, helps make the bow want to go up, which in turn gives the boat a little bit of helm. So the skipper really likes that. So that's very important in these light conditions. And this picture looks really nice with both leeches quite open. You can see, Alex, maybe you can point to it. I see 3 telltales, 2 on the jib and 1 on the main, the top one on the main, and they're all flowing. So this was, I think Michael specifically chose this picture because it was, he gets A+ for the trim. We don't want to take any bad, we don't show any bad pictures. This is an excellent picture. But this is nice.
No, it'd be good to hear your thoughts too, Eric. But I think with the jib trim, it's like, I think you got to hedge to be a little bit more open than you think, right?
Yeah, in the light air. That's why I drew that. If the jib stalls, the jib telltale stall in this condition, the boat will just slowly slow down and just go slower and slower and slower. And that likewise, it takes just as long for the boat to, once you get back to perfect trim, to accelerate. Remember, it's kind of he who slows down the least. They're big, heavy boats. They kind of all go the same speed in this condition. So keeping the boat up to speed all the time is kind of what I'm looking for in this. And that's flow on the telltales.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we learned in our last seminar with Nitro. You know, with this new in-hauling technique, it's really easy to close the leach down. So the jib trimmer has to be super conscious of where his in-haul position is and making sure that he's not oversheeted while he's in-hauling. That comes to our first question. I think it's from Ched Proctor, who asks, how much are you sagging the head stay with the Mal jib in sort of these underpowered conditions versus the LM2L?
Yeah. You sagging the mast as opposed to not the head stay, the mast.
How much are you sagging the mast? Yeah.
I mean, for us, this last winter, we kind of had a similar tuning that we had. So this last winter was the first time that we really spent time with the Mal and the GT, the Australian jibs. And for the most part, I think before going to those Aussie sails, I think we as a team probably had a slightly more kind of tight head stay setup than the rest of the boat. So I think they kind of just fit our program a little bit better, but we didn't really approach the winter any differently with our tuning. And I think we didn't have a lot of light days, but the mast sag that we had would be, in the ballpark of where we would have the mast sag for an LM2L.
Gotcha.
I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
That's a good question.
Do you think that would change with?
No, I don't think so. We kind of had this debate too, and the sail is a little bit flatter and it's more open. It handles the twist. It's straighter in the back down low. So the added in-haul that we're sailing, that the Aussie setup uses, is not closing the slot down. I think that's what Ched was getting at is, as we sag the mast, we're closing the slot between the main and the jib, but the cut of the jib is different enough, and the trim, that we're not closing it down too much. I remember Vince telling me he was in Miami and sailing, and he was going pretty good, and they tried, they're using the in-hauler, they're feeling good, they're fast in the race, they're going upwind, and he said, let's try moving the in-hauler out a little bit and see if we go any faster, and the boat went worse, it went slower. So, he had the whole Aussie setup with the rake and everything like that, and it handled the in-hauling quite nicely throughout the wind range.
Let's talk now more about powering up. So we're in the mid-range, we're on the rail, we're not hiking yet, but we're comfortably maybe leaning out just a little bit. Talk about the transition from underpowered. What are you changing? What are you looking for in that transition?
Yeah, I mean, this photo must be right after tack or something, because I don't know why we're not hiking. But
notes from Alex.
But yeah, obviously, as the breeze is coming up, the head stay is getting a little tighter. The ram is coming back. You're putting a little bit of backstay on, and you're obviously sheeting the main a bit tighter. I think still you're trying to develop a lot of power. I think you're trying to develop power and some rudder angle to kind of help you point. So I think it's kind of really about like how tight you can get the main leach without having to be too tight. So yeah, it's just kind of a balance again between the main sheet and the jib sheet, and seeing how both those trims are reacting to the helmsman.
So Michael, when you look up at the main and you're talking about setting it up, and I know you guys, everybody has stripes on their main, and you guys like the one in the middle, the 62.5 stripe, and what are you keying off of primarily? You look at the overall depth, you look at the twist, you look at the tension, or is it just heel angle and rudder angle? Go through your little bit of thought process.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of monitoring like the camber and depth up there, and how much the main is twisting. And I think there's a clear relationship between the amount of backstay and the main sheet, and how that relates to camber and twist up there. So I think just judging by whether you feel as a team whether you're pointing really well, or maybe you're not pointing really well. You could think about things of, maybe I need to have a slightly tighter main leach to help us point a little bit, or vice versa. Maybe we're a little too high and slow. We want to go a little bit faster. Maybe it's just a little bit more backstay on, just to let the top of the leach kind of flick open a little bit. And help flatten the boat out, let the bow come down a little bit and go a little faster. So I think the main thing is that they're really small micro changes, right? Like I'm pulling in the gross main sheet to a certain place, getting the main like in its general position, and then we have like a little kind of measurement stick on the backstay, which kind of just helps me have a ballpark number in mind. So like when it's 13 knots and I'm sheeting on the main and we're about to go upwind, I know generally where the backstay should be, so I don't really have to kind of spend too much time dialing that in. And then once you're in the ballpark, it's about just kind of fine tuning how much power you need and how much power you don't need for the certain mode you're sailing in.
So you've got a little, maybe Alex can point to it on the back of the boat. A lot of guys see it, but maybe some guys don't know about that. They put a little batten, and it's just screwed to the transom of the boat, and it goes up 6 or 8 inches, and you've got 4 or 5 marks on that, or a number, or what do you guys have? Do you guys have different colors, or you have numbers, or what have you got back there, Mike?
So first of all, our batten is taped on, and it falls over, it comes off about every regatta. So maybe we should look into screwing that thing on next time.
That'd be a good idea. Maybe a little 5200.
What?
Maybe a little 5200.
Yeah, it's a great idea, Eric. You should think about joining our team.
I could be your boat jig.
That'd be phenomenal.
I'm there.
Yeah, we have like a little piece of string that's led through the actual backstay wire, and then, like you say, it's a cut piece of batten that's just taped on the back with marks from like 1 to 6 that are about like a 1/2 inch apart. So it's just like I said earlier, it's just in a certain general condition, it's really easy for me to just get into the ballpark area really quickly and then kind of fine tune it from there.
Perfect.
Do you guys have the ram hooked up to the backstay that a lot of people are kind of going to?
Whoa, what is this? I haven't heard about this, man. Tell me.
What's that? We don't
Okay.
do that.
So basically, the backstay is hooked up, so when you pull or when you let the backstay off around the weather mark, the ram doesn't get changed. Like before, you have to let the ram off and then let the backstay off, and now you don't have to do it. So that way, when you go around the bottom mark and you pull the backstay, we have our mark at what would be 10 on the loose gauge on the headstay. You pull it to that, then your ram is in the same spot. It's just another way of being able to get to the same ram spot if you were happy with it. And we have like marks on the actual ram, so that way we know that we're in the same spot.
I think that should be the next Etchells webinar.
Yeah, there you go, Alex.
Showing me and Eric just splicing the backstay. I don't actually know how to do it. Ezra did it. He hooked it up. It was very nice.
We got to call Ezra on dog.
Yeah, but
we do not have that.
Well, that's another thing. It's a cool little thing. You should get Ian to look into it. I mean, he's probably got nothing going on in Miami right now.
He's got a couple of cats, so he's pretty busy feeding them, and I think he combs their hair about 5-10 times a day. So pretty active father.
All right.
There was a question in the chat room. Primary control for flattening the main in light air, mainly out haul, or use Cunningham. I rarely use the Cunningham in super light air. It's more busy. We can talk about that a little bit more on this picture. I think for myself, the out haul definitely does not get over eased in light air, and I think primarily for flattening the main is the mass bender, at the deck, pushing it forward a little bit. Would you agree with that, Michael?
Yeah, for sure. Like the Cunningham's something that we never have on our radar in the really light stuff, and the out haul is an interesting one because, like you say, you can go too loose for sure, and if it's really flat water, you can probably go really tight on it. And then the master ram and the backstay are the two things that are gonna be the controls to flatten the main.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool with the newer jibs and the newer setup that we sail with more. We can use the backstay more. I kind of had an experience beginning of last summer where I got some of the new Aussie jibs, and I was racing with it, and I didn't change it. I had a good tuning partner, and I just used my standard setup. And when I could get the jib to look right with the forestay quite firm, the main was so flat and the boat wasn't balanced nicely, and I couldn't power it up. So then I would ease the backstay or do what I could to make the main full. And generally the forestay was so saggy that the jibs looked all out of whack and draft forward and too full and just all screwed up, and I couldn't get the balance just right. So that's one thing we can do more now with the setup with a firmer forestays. It allows you to use the backstay downrange to flatten the main enough that you can trim it hard enough, and you don't have to just have it so eased all the time.
I think one last thing on that question is the master ram is going to be the primary control to flatten the main down low, and then the backstay is going to do the same to flatten the main up high. So
yeah, it's nice because then normally you put a little ram on, sags the forestay more. When we're trying to induce forestay sag to power the boat up. The new setup isn't quite so much. We're looking for a firmer forestay, so we're gonna put a little ram on to flatten the bottom of the main, and then we're happy to pull a little backstay on to get the forestay back to where it was. If we're using the GT or the MAL or lighter, it's probably going to be the MAL. So
Michael, this past winter, we had a good discussion about main trim, and you told me something very interesting about how you think about the leach of the sail and the top batten relative to the mode. Can you just kind of walk the viewership through your thought process there? You have a very unique take on it.
Yeah, you just mean like the top batten, like being parallel to the center line of the boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just kind of like something that I like to visualize as a main trimmer, and I just try to, when I'm looking at the main, when we're sailing, I like to see the top batten and see how the top batten is exiting. So like maybe like the last 5 inches of the batten. And is that last 5 inches of the batten parallel with kind of the bow to stern line of the boat? Or is that batten, do I think it's returning to weather, or is it returning to leeward? And I think that just kind of gives me a good sense of what the top of the main is doing. Is it too closed off? Is it directly kind of in line with the way the boat's traveling, or is it open? And for me, that's just kind of like a visual thing to help me cue into, like, sometimes it's like difficult to understand how closed off or open you are on the main while you're on the boat, and from off the boat it becomes like very clear. And when you look at photos from off the boat, it's like very clear whether the main sheet tension is too tight or perfect or too loose. And I think that's just like a visual cue that I use to help me make that decision. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting because when I first got into the class, I was very fixated on, or maybe over conscious of the telltales at the top. But once Michael kind of walked me through and explained his thought process, it really changed the way that I thought about specifically the top of the main and controlling twist and knowing, based off of your mode, where that angle of the top batten should be. So that was, hope everybody kind of got it as well. So we got another question. They're just saying that, Eric, you made a really good point, dude. You were just such an educator.
Backstay.
But so one thing that you guys do really well is you guys go really well in breeze. Talk about, now we've gone through the first 2 transitions. Now, it looks like you're hiking really hard. Ian, not so much. I think that's Joe in the middle. Joe, you got some work to do. And Benj, I think you might need to switch back to the main sheet gross tune and give Michael that hiking rope.
Dude, so
walk us through.
Nobody's safe.
Alex, that's Joe Morris in front of Benj there.
Oh.
He gets the credit for hiking.
Right.
Gets the credit. Go, Joe.
Joe, nice work giving Michael the day off there and saving his legs. That was really taking one for the team.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Ian's taking a break on the boat.
So walk
It's
us
okay.
through the transition now. You're overpowered, power versus balance. Now you're looking for maybe less power and more balance. Talk about that relationship and what you guys do to the boat to achieve it.
Yeah, I think when Benj entered the class, like 5 or 6 years ago, I think he had a thought of trying to sail the boat with more headstay tension than the rest of the fleet, in kind of especially like this condition and possibly like the mid-range condition as well. So, when we're overpowered and we're all hiking and the wind is up, we've been trying to achieve as much headstay tension as we can. And that comes from, backstay tension and main sheet tension primarily. Also the ram kind of goes into the equation of providing headstay tension. But yeah, I mean, for us, we're trying to depower the main, put a lot of headstay tension to the boat. And then kind of the way we do that with, I guess, like our trimming style is we try to keep the main sheet tension really tight. And then we bleed off heel angle with the Traveler. And I think that's something that's like maybe kind of new to Etchel's fleet. And that's kind of just like a general style of sailing in breeze.
Yeah, I've been in Miami a lot of, over the last few years, and definitely in the beginning, that was one thing that was quite obvious from off the boat was tighter forestay on your boat, and probably the Traveler. When I first got in the class and it was really windy, you never drop the Traveler below center line. Once it got to, the standard trimming was get the Traveler down to center line, and then the boat still keeps heeling over too much, and we've got the main as flat as we can. Then we start easing the main sheet, and the main sheet has quite a big component of the forestay tension. It's probably 80% or 70% backstay and 30% main sheet tension. So we were easing the main sheet, and it's basically doing the wrong thing, because it's easing the forestay and making the jib fuller and getting the boat a little out of balance. So I would notice you guys, sometimes the Traveler would sometimes be like all the way, big puff would hit, and you guys weren't afraid to let the Traveler all the way down to the bottom, right? Boat would get back on its feet, and then quickly it would come back up. So that was kind of a big change that a lot of people are starting to adopt more. And
I think like maybe people think that if the Traveler drops, they're going to lose their ability to point. But if you don't drop the Traveler, you're going to lose, you're going to have to dump a lot of main sheet, which when you lose that main sheet tension, that bleeds a lot of power, and it doesn't allow you to point either. So I think one thing that we're able to do is we drop the Traveler, but we keep a very consistent, main sheet tension and kind of like back of the main power in the sail from the top all the way to the bottom. So I think it still allows us to point, and I think that, the boat's balanced well, and the jib's a little bit nicer too, because the head stays tight.
I noticed in this picture too, your mast very, very straight up to the spreaders, and just starting to bend more at the hound. So when it's really windy, what do you guys do with the ram and the mast butt?
Yeah, we pull the ram aft all the way to the back in the partners, and that makes the head stay a little bit tighter. And we also move the mast butt farther forward to kind of achieve more of a lower straightening in the rig, if you will. There's a balance to that too, right? Like if you put the mast butt way forward and then you ram aft all the way, the bottom part of the main is actually going to become really, really deep and draggy, because the lower part of the mast is so straight that the main's gonna become very, very deep down low and then really flat up top, because the mast is gonna be bending a lot up top. So for us, when it's really windy, it's Benj has really good input on this as well. Is kind of we look at this lower stripe on the mainsail and see kind of the camber in this lower portion, because obviously we want a tight head stay, but we want the general camber and depth of the main to not be so out of balance.
And then what are the signs?
What's your range? What's your range on the mast butt? Because the Australians are going through 5 mils, 10 mils max? What range of MassButt are you going through?
I'm trying to remember. If Ian is on the chat, he should put it in. But I'm pretty sure it's like 7 or 8 mils forward.
Okay. So not that much. So if you're sailing along, and what are the signs you're looking for that the boat's got too much power in heavy air? And then what do you do like before the start? You want to win before the start, first time trimming, you kind of got your setup. Is it the boat's got too much heel, or Ben just whining back there with the tiller, or you're just feeling the boat too much heel? So what are you looking for? And then what's the first thing you do, or your biggest ideas?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is the heel angle, and then it's the communication from Benj with what he's feeling in the rudder, right? Does he have too much helm, right? And that's something that's going to signify whether we have, whether we're too powered up. And then for me, I'm always monitoring the overbend wrinkles in the main, and I don't want to go so hard on the backstay that the main completely inverts. So there's kind of just a balancing act there between, Benj's helm and the overbend wrinkles in the main, and then obviously the Traveler.
So one question that we got from someone was, when you drop the Traveler, what adjustments do you need to look to make to the jib during that short period where the Traveler's down?
Yeah, I think in the past we've been blowing all of the jib and hauler, but I think more recently, like this last winter and more recently, we've been actually keeping the in-hauler on still a little bit. Obviously, not as far in-hauled as we're doing in a moderate condition, but I think we're still keeping a little bit of in-hauler on and then just being very twisty with the jib. So probably just, raising the lead.
And then one question that I have, and I feel like most Setchel sailors would also like to hear this, but your angle of attack into a puff, I think, is super important. Talk about like what your communication with Benj is, or whoever's calling the breeze, to allow Benj to be able to enter a puff and not just heel way over or be too thin.
Yeah, the communication is obviously really key, and Ian up front has the best view of wind, and Joe as well is hiking really hard and has his hands a little bit more free. So it's really an asset to have both of them be heads out of the boat as much as they can, and they both call pressure. We kind of go back and forth a little bit as a team, and we'll probably refine it some more, but someone on the boat will be calling like immediate pressure, and then someone on the boat will be calling kind of like macro pressure, like where they see the most amount of breeze, up the course, kind of near the weather marks. But someone will always be counting down a puff or a lull, and like I just said, like it's equally as important to count down a lull as well, because any change in wind pressure is going to change the way I play my Traveler, the way I play the backstay. Just trying to keep the heel angle consistent and the amount of helm for Benj consistent as well.
Yeah, great.
I was just looking at this picture, and
picture. Yeah.
Can I just make one comment? It was pretty cool. We were doing some testing in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, the Mighty NAR class, and we found it's the same across the board with both boats, with really any boat. It was quite breezy. And looking at this picture, it's a little bit to leeward, but it's nice. We kind of get a medium angle picture of both sails, and if we could highlight, the exit, how much of the bottom batten we're seeing on both the main and the jib, and they look very similar here, and they're very matched down low. We can't quite see the top of the jib, but it's fairly open, and the main's open for the balance. But the main's flat in the head. We're not flipping the boat over so much, but both sails are kind of driving equally. And when we could balance those two out and keep them as similar as possible most of the time, that was the boat that really went the fastest. You can see this setup. The bottom of the jib is quite powerful and full. One thing we often forget is that, when it's windy, the main is more about flattening it out so we don't have too much helm. And instead of being the main driving force of the boat, it switches to the jib, and the jib becomes the more driving force. So It's nice trim there. It's a good picture.
Even in these middle stripes, the twist looks pretty similar as well. It's tough to tell because the middle of the mane covers up that second or third up from the bottom draft stripe on the jib, but the exits seem to be pretty similar as well in terms of twist. So you guys are hauling ass. I remember this day. We had pump problems. We had water management crisis going on our boat, taking on water.
Alex.
New pump didn't work,
Alex.
but
Shouldn't
Excuses.
we got smoked by you guys in like 4 or 5 lineups, so that was cool.
The water doesn't hurt upwind, Alex. The water's good, man. It makes the boat bigger, makes it longer.
Yeah.
So what?
So you guys recently made this. I'm just going to graze over that water management crisis, but you guys recently made the switch over to the Mal and the GT this winter. You've touched on it a few times. Talk about the importance of the shroud location and in general what your thoughts are on these two jibs.
Do you want me to do the shrouds or the jib first?
Shrouds.
Yeah, I think the shroud location is something that we for sure haven't mastered yet or have drawn any real conclusions from, and it's something that is still on our development list and something that we really still need to work on. But yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. Obviously those 2 Australian boats were set up very well and going very fast in Corpus Christi at the Worlds. And one interesting takeaway was that their shroud location was quite a bit different than the rest of the fleet. And it seems like, before this last Worlds, the shroud location's always been at like that 2 and 4 location, and no one really has changed it. I've heard that people used to change it in the past, and maybe Eric has more info on that. But yeah, so this past winter we were. What was that?
Back in the dark ages, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, but so this winter we kind of we spent a lot of time kind of adjusting them a lot through the wind range, and kind of considered the shroud location like a kind of a macro change that we would make to the tune. And it makes a lot of sense with the physics of the boat. I mean, the farther aft you move the shrouds, you're going to be locking in and pulling the mast more actively backward and achieving more headstay tension. And so to be honest, we don't, on our program, we don't really know exactly what hole location is best for a certain wind range, but it's something that, we need to spend a lot more time figuring out, because whenever you change the hole location on the chain plate, that also changes the amount of, it obviously changes the tension in the shrouds, and you might need to go to turn on or off to get the tension back to, the numbers that you're trying to get. And then also it changes the amount of turns you'll need to go a step up and a step down. So it takes a lot of time, I think, to dial that in.
What jib does this look like you have up here?
Yeah.
It's probably, I'd have to say it's the Mal.
Yeah, a little softer, a little lighter.
Yeah.
Probably mounts like full power.
Yeah, this winter was the first time we used the Mal and the GT, and I think we sailed every single day with, or maybe like almost every day with the Mal and the GT, and we were really pleased with them. I mean, I don't think we had to change our setup that much, because like I said earlier, we're, I think, more set up for having a little bit of a tighter headstay on average than the other teams. So I think it kind of fit our program well. But I'll tell you one thing, it's sure nice to just have 2 jibs instead of 3 jibs when you're trying to make a decision going into a regatta. And I think it was the first regatta of the Biscayne Bay Series. I remember, I think it was the last day, and it was in the 10 to 12 knot range, and we had the Mal up, and I think we won the first race on Sunday. And we're going really well. We're really happy. And then the breeze came up to like 15, 17 knots maybe. We had a big debate on the boat whether we should switch to the GT, and we ended up just sticking with the Mal because a little bit less work, and it was also just good to get some more data points on it outside of its supposed wind range. And and we were equally as fast. And I think we won that race as well. But I remember coming in off the water, every person I talked to, they had it was either an LM2H, a GM, or a GT, and I think we were the only person on a light jib. So it's nice having just 2 jibs, and it seems like they can kind of go outside of their wind ranges a little bit, just with the way that they're set, they're built. So for us, we're really happy with them.
Yeah, they seem to have a nice crossover. We've been hearing that from a lot of customers, a lot of guys who use them, and shape-wise, they are slightly different. But I think the primary thing to remember is that the Mal is made out of the lightest cloth that the class allows. It's 270, and it's fine.
Is that lighter than the LM2L?
No, LM2L is the same. Those are 270. But the GT and the LM2H, those are made out of 300. They're a little heavier, and they're gonna, you can push the Mal up range more. You can push the LM2 Light up range a bit, but you're just putting hard miles on the sail. Is the biggest difference. They're gonna wear out a little quicker if it's fresh. It's a brand new Mal. Yeah, it's gonna go up the range. These are crosscut jibs. They're gonna get a little fuller quite quickly. The same token, I think if you have a GT and you've used it a couple, 3 times in 20 knots or something like that, and it's 15, you're debating, is it going to pick up or not? I've heard a lot of people say that GT was pretty happy in flat water downrange. You were kind of experienced that too, huh, Alex?
Yeah. This past winter we had a race where it was like 15 knots at the start, but board flat water, and we were contemplating making a switch. And we decided, it's pretty flat. Let's just try it. Like Michael trying it going up range, and I think we got like 3rd that race. So that was good. I think that if the sea state is bumpy, the Mal can go up range more, and you can sail with it a little higher breeze. If it's flatter water and lighter, the GT can kind of go down range very well. So like Michael touched on, it's all about sea state, and you really just have to be super cognizant of that. But yeah, I think that most people who make the switch, and things that we've kind of reiterated and questions that we've gotten where they've said, can you get the jibs and stick with the old setup, not change the shrouds, not change the way you do your jibs? You got to be all in to either or. You can't really go halfway. That's kind of where you get stuck, and you kind of go backwards with your progress. Michael, what kind of jib lead system do you have on your boat, or what did you make the change to?
We've done a lot of changes with the jib sheet system, because in this new boat we had the jib where it was just one line on the deck, and then it went pretty far aft, and then when everything was down below, but that was causing a lot of friction. So we actually went back to kind of just our older setup of having everything on the cabin top. And then we have where the jib sheet, so we still have a track, and then we still have like a 2 box where the jib sheet kind of goes through, and then just in front of that we have our in-haulers. But it's honestly still not perfect. Like right before a race this last winter, our jib sheet broke because we just need to spend some more time figuring it out, because with these sails you do adjust the in-hauler a lot, and there's a lot of friction there. So having a good system, makes a lot of difference.
Do you have like a floating that goes up and down, or do you have just in and out?
Yeah, we can adjust the height and the in and out.
And you have a track.
I feel like I don't know. Again, if Ian's on the chat, he should weigh in.
It's been a long time. He's been stuck in London a long time.
He's combing his kitties.
Too dizzy as a cat dad. I can't believe it.
And what mainsail do you guys run primarily? Joe Morris.
We've been using the PCF. So Joe just said no track.
No track. Okay, it's good. You got to get trimmers involved. His main
Thank
sheet
you, Joe.
tactician guys, they don't know that stuff that well.
Good thing somebody's paying attention on board.
Seriously, right?
No track. All right. So after all this success, you've been to the top of the mountain. What keeps you motivated to keep coming out and working hard? And what are some things that you're working on now to try and go faster?
Yeah, I mean, like going into every year, our goal is to win the Worlds. So we set a pretty high bar, and we're always trying to develop and improve as a team. And, whether that's, with the way the boat's set up or the way we're sailing it. So I think for us, it's funny right now because we haven't sailed the boat in a long time, and it's weird not having a World. So I'm kind of having to try to think about things that are on the plate. But I think shroud location is still relatively an unknown for us, and we need to put some more time into that. Like I just said, the jib and haulers, and we need to get that a little bit more dialed in. Maybe I should know whether it's on a track or not. And that's kind of it. And we have Joe Morris is who's been hassling us on the chat is a newish member to the team. He joined us this winter, and so just kind of improving communication, between the trimmers and Benj is extremely important. Myself and Benj upwind, and Joe and Benj downwind. I think it has so much to do with how well the boat's going through the water. So, there's still a lot we can do as a team, but I'd have to say this winter in the Biscayne Bay Series was maybe, I felt like it was one of our best performances. I felt like as a team we were, we had everything kind of working for us. So I'm really happy with where we are and the developments we've made. And the class is great because it's, constantly changing, and people are trying different things, and there's little gains to be had here and there. So it's fun to learn from everyone.
Michael,
It starts like
we
these,
see from this
you're
picture.
going to win the world.
We see from this picture that starting is pretty good. Most of the time you guys do a good job getting off the line. That's you guys 12:28. What I'm curious, what mast are you guys using, and what has been your experience with the different masts that are out there right now? I know there's a lot of development going on with spreader sweep and angles and rigs and Australian masts and Proctors. Maybe just touch on that real briefly as one of our last things, and then
sure. Yeah. So when we first started, we were using a Proctor rig, so a softer mast and the deeper mainsail. And we've switched to the whale spar to try to get a little bit of a stiffer mast and try to achieve a little bit more head stay tension. And with a stiffer mast, you got to go with a bit of a flatter main. So we're on the PCFM now. And I think, everything's like pretty, it's funny. Like I think to start out, we were very different than most Etchells in terms of our setup, like a really bendy mast and the fuller main. And we were just kind of sailing differently. And I think that showed some weaknesses. Like we were extremely fast in the breeze and not quite as quick in the light stuff. And I think as a team, we figured that we'd rather be maybe sacrifice a little bit at the top end and get to on par in the lighter air. So we've gone to the PCFM main, which is I think a really nice main, and it fits the whale really well. And the spreader angle is takes some time. It's for us, even on the whale spar, it's really tricky to be very precise with it. It's kind of a tricky measurement. And it's kind of hard to get both the spreaders kind of perfectly, coming back to the same angle. I think our deflection's like 30 millimeters. And I think that's what GT has, or what GT uses on his mast. Yeah, and I think that we made like one little fine tune this winter. We noticed that on one tack, the main was setting up a little bit flatter. So we took the mast down and remeasured it, and we moved one of the spreaders, I think, forward a little bit to try to improve the side-to-side consistency and in the main depth.
Nice.
Those little toggles are kind of hard because I was talking to Ian about it. Like sometimes when you put on one turn on each side, you get like 5 mils, and you put on, or a half turn is 5, and then you put on another half, and then all of a sudden it's like 15.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to find consistency. Have you guys been able to perfect that system or come up with a way to perfect that system?
No, definitely not. I remember in Corpus Christi, I spent maybe like 5 hours in like 100-degree heat trying to just tinker with it, like you say. I mean, it's
funny.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. Well, geez, yeah. Well, Eric, you got any last questions for Michael?
There's a good question in the chat room if you want to address that.
Sure.
About communication.
Talk a little bit about, talk about your communication with your 4UP crew. And why don't this is a lot of, we could talk about the whole race course, but let's just focus on the start. On the start, what's the communication loop like as you guys approach go? Yeah,
it's first of all, it helps a lot having 4 people instead of 3 people. And yeah, I'm kind of just like looking around, trying to just find kind of holes in the fleet and stay in relatively low dense areas just to try to keep our options open. I feel in naturals you can get kind of caught up in the sea or current of boats and just get stuck in it completely and get kind of screwed. So just trying to stay a little bit out of phase with people and keep our options open. And yeah, just always, for me, I'm just always, still looking upwind. Joe helps me look upwind before the start and we can evaluate whether we're seeing, any pressure changes in the last, 5 minutes before the gun goes down. And then, when we're on starboard on our final approach, I'll kind of just be generally talking about, our general course and communicating that with Benj, saying, 1 up, 5 up, 5 down, 10 down, and kind of using my hand to kind of point where I think we should be. And also just kind of calling out general modes like high and fast or high and slow. High and fast to me means keeping the flow going on both the foils. So obviously well above close hauled, but not getting to a point where the boat's going to completely crash. And high and slow would be, we need to almost be head to wind to try to gain space to leeward, and it's fine to be slow, right? Maybe you're too close to the line. But in general, so we'll have Joe looking for poachers or people coming from behind and trying to hook. So we have, I think Ian also maybe looks to leeward and helps for poachers. So those are people on port tack looking to tack inside your hole. And then I think Joe's looking behind to see for people kind of sailing behind. And, we're just trying to protect our space and keep, our hole to leeward if we have one. And then we've been doing this a lot, and it's a real luxury of having 4 people on the boat is putting the bowman up on the bow as you get near and near the start line. So we take a lot of time trying to get the best line sights we can before every start. And, we put a lot of pressure on Ian in the final bits of the start to kind of count us down into a point where he thinks we're close to the line, but not too exposed. So, having a really good line sight and making sure that we know where the line is allows us to start, in maybe a little bit less dense of areas and not so close to an end and be able to get off the line a bit more consistently.
Starting is super important in
Yeah.
a big fleet, especially in the Atchels. Clear air is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Michael, we really like to thank you for your time. If we didn't answer your question, we're going to do the same thing that we did after the last seminar, where we take all the questions and then we put out an article, and we'll kind of divvy it up between the 3 of us. And we got one question asking if we were going to do another one of these for the Weekend Warriors. Eric and I got to do some thinking, see what we want to chat about. If you guys have an idea for us, feel free to send us an email. If you want to do one of these just for your local fleets, we've done a bunch of those as well, and we find that that's a really good way to concentrate efforts and really focus on helping people in their local areas. But Michael, enjoy the rest of your evening. Eric, get your polish out, dude. That the trophy on the left, you gotta redo it. It looks terrible.
I'll get on that, man. I've got people to do that. I'll get them. I'll call them up. All right, thanks, Michael.
All right,
Good talking to
thank
you guys. Thanks, everybody who joined in. Take care.
Yeah.